Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. I am Tony Ponturo with my longtime friend and co-host, Ray Warren. Ray, how are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. Very good. Summer's on the way and just loving life, having a good time. Things, a lot to talk about as always. Great guest. And we're here to have some fun. So shall I introduce my fun fact?
You already stepped onto the center stage, so go with it.
Well, we want to get a lot of time with Danielle. So anyway, one of the things that you and I have both been involved in a long time is marketing. And I just came across some fun facts of 3 very important, impressive logos that most everyone has seen. But I thought we would talk about them with our audience. The first one is FedEx, where not everyone sees the arrow in between the D and the E. But that's to show the movement and to show that everything goes forward on FedEx. So we think that's pretty fun. Then we have Amazon, which I didn't even know this, but the little arrow goes from A to Z. So everybody knows they sell everything from A to Z. And the little smile is to say how much fun it is to purchase things from Amazon. I actually had a moment with my grandson where there's something that I didn't get that I said, Caleb, I've looked everywhere and I can't find it. He goes, did you try Amazon? He's 4 years old. And then Cisco, the most interesting one I could find of many. Founded in San Francisco, so Cisco, okay. But what I always looked at those 3-4 bars, however 6 bars, as just like digital technology up and down, but it's actually iconic imaging of the Golden Gate Bridge, which I never thought of. And there's a whole bunch more, but we just like to have a little bit of fun at the top and not take too much time. So we'll keep coming back with these. And if you hate them, let us know. And if you like them, we can, I'm a fun fact data guy. I like stuff like that. So
that's right. And thank you all of our listeners and watchers. You can find the Wisdom Circle wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts. We know it's a competitive environment. There's a lot going on. So, but we appreciate those that have watched and have reached out to us. We have a good guest today. We have a great guest today. And I'll just do a quick introduction, and then we'll talk about some of the things going on in the community or in really society right now. But our guest is Danielle Byrd. Danielle is a senior VP at MarketCast. MarketCast is a big research company helping marketers get out there and touch the consumer and with data other than just going by the seat of their pants. And she'll articulate it more than that. But, as we talk about logos and trademarks, you realize that that's really almost the start of all of this. It's the first sort of communication to a consumer, which is FedEx, Cisco. Okay, what does that say to the consumer? So we'll get into that with her. But the whole world keeps, we keep saying changing, social media. You've got a lot going on. We had the NFL draft, which actually had some, interesting elements to it if you watched any of the 7 rounds. And then you also have the NBA playoffs going on right now. So, Ray, let's touch on at least 1 or 2 of them. What did you see with the NFL draft as you observed it?
Yeah. Promoted all over ABC, Disney assets, and ESPN, of course. Escalation, right? And the 52-week strategy. So every league and global. So I think there's so much going on. If you think of the NFL, the NBA, MLB, FIFA, and of course the Olympics being the best example of global sports and escalation. The draft, just gets bigger every year. Viewership gets bigger every year. The NFL gets bigger every year. And it's working. Sports, as we know, is kind of the dominant viewing vehicle. The thing that I think, and you and I talked about a little bit, the thing that talk about escalation is, the prank calls that went out, right? Because that kind of ties into just escalation of people, and not necessarily in a good way, but we used to do like harmless little pranks, ring a doorbell and run down the block, or make a phone call to the deli and ask a question, is Mr. Bacon there? But now there are kids actually calling players who are like, their heart is in their mouth. They're waiting to find out where they're going in the NFL draft, and somebody's making a prank call. It kind of boggles my mind. And so I guess, the TikTok and Facebook and the Instagram world more. I think people say that the older folks have kind of hijacked Facebook, but Instagram and TikTok is still where the youths of America do a lot of their social interaction, X to a smaller degree. And anything to make an impression. And I just feel like that's gotten a little bit out of hand. There were more than just the one to Sanders' son. So yeah, that was a little bit of everything else was so good and exciting, and that was a little bit of a drag.
Yeah, I guess it's all about content. I mean, if we even go back to the draft, it used to be at a ballroom, I think at the Marriott or the New York Hilton. And ESPN, who was desperate for content, said, well, we could make a TV show of this. And now it's become, I think in the second round and the third round, they had international fans from Munich and Berlin and London and, all over the world. And it's really become a big production. And with that will come, unfortunately, someone taking it to, a level to say, well, I'm going to be part of the content. Now, particularly the son of the Atlanta Falcons coach there's a big mea culpa, and the NFL fined the Falcons $250,000 and the coach $150,000.
Yeah.
And someone said, I hope, well, the kid's 21 years old, but someone said, I hope the father takes it out of his allowance or something, because he shouldn't go out unscathed. But it's just, it's just, we've talked about this, and I'd probably come across sometimes as a society prude, but there's no lines. Charles Koch, we talked about this. Where are the morals? Where are the morals gone? Like, where are the flowers gone? Where are the morals gone? And he came out at a speech in D.C. yesterday about how even corporations and it'll be interesting also to hear from Danielle, have sort of lost their principles. It's all about power and what does it take to get what we want done and everything else be damned. So, and he says, you may win a few, but you're not going to win, long term. So there's a lot going on in society, which is either going to blow up all in our face and we'll say, I told you so, or this is how society is going to go in the future.
I don't think there'll be an I told you so moment, because no one's asking, how am I doing? Is that okay? It's just happening. Nobody's asking for permission. Nobody's apologizing. And look, a lot of it's leadership. We don't talk politics on this program, but it is example setting and people who play by the rules and people who don't. And there is that whole, I don't know when it goes back to cheating, just like, hey, if he cheats and gets a 97 and I study and get a 79, maybe I should just cheat because I want to go to the same school. And so it's just been this moral breakdown over time, based on ambition, based on power, based on all those things. So, yeah.
One of the interesting things going on, although that had controversy, and hopefully my dog barking downstairs is not coming through because he's mad at something down there. But the NBA, yeah, the NBA playoffs have been amazing games. I think the ratings are up, and we talked a little bit before we sort of came on to record. Is that it's almost a different game, at least I'll say in my opinion, once the playoffs come. I mean, the defense is suffocating. The next Detroit playoffs that I watched a lot of it's like a different product. And then the fan sort of connects differently to that. Thus the ratings are up and the attentions are up and off we go. And there's something now on the line. Maybe, again, as sports fans, if there's nothing really on the line, one of 82 games, that's sort of how we reflect it. But if there's something on the line, we're going to pay more attention.
Yeah. And as you were saying all that, I was thinking about, is that healthy? Because it's it's kind of like the Final Four, right? The regular season college basketball, it's like if I've got nothing to do, and if you live in Florida, there's always something to do. But if I was living up in this New York or whatever, I would watch a lot of college basketball because there's nothing to do. But I didn't really care. Final Four comes around, I'm in. And I just wonder how, what they do. I think Adam is trying to do some things to make the regular season more sustainable and generate interest. But it's an overload of content. There's just so much time. And we talked about podcasts, 4.4 million podcasts. So we thank all of the people who are watching or listening.
Yeah.
4.4 million podcasts. Well, how many hours of good television are there? So, yeah, I wonder. And, you can't shorten the season because you can't, rights fees and attendance and ticket revenue all mean something. So escalation, it's just all about everything's escalating. And I don't know when or how it stops. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad. But at some point, I bet we'll have 52 weeks of a lot of sports,
Yeah.
And it's just the way it goes. But there it is. But you're right. The thing that gets me, and going back to how popular the NBA is, and true, everything you said is correct. And then I thought about the Savannah Bananas, who draw 80,000 people to Clemson Stadium. And then we were talking about the conference that Danielle's at, and packed to the rafters, and how, boy, just people gathering as crowds. You would think with some of the things that have gone on, maybe that would be like a little less popular, but it's more popular than ever. People sharing an experience, except at the movie theaters, apparently.
Well, it'd be interesting. I think all of this leads well into our guest because we're trying to, something used to be called just-in-time learning. We're trying to catch up with everything going on with social media. I think we won't go into Bill Belichick, but I think he's learning that social media is a powerful thing. As someone said this morning, some of the pictures that they showed in the CBS morning Sunday morning interview, that he probably didn't realize they were on social media. Where he's lifting up his girlfriend on the beach, with his feet and stuff like that. That it's gone global. Everyone sees it. It's like,
Well, I know we're tight on trying to get to Danielle, which is important. What did he do an interview on CBS Sunday morning for? What was
he was promoting a book. So CBS owns Simon & Schuster, being an advocate of the show. I know you were instrumental in getting advertisers back with the Charles Kuralt days, but but he was promoting a book, and supposedly
that's a dumb way to promote a book.
Well, exactly. So there's a lot of criticism about, and if you haven't seen it.
Oh, I was there live watching it. I'm like,
okay,
what?
So and she imposed herself to say, well, we're not talking.
We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So again, everything's blending and perception, and so now I'm sure the athletic director of UNC and some of their alumni and contributors are like, okay, what do we have here? Who's our coach? Who's really influencing him? What's going on? So there's a lot to unpack there. But once again, and real quickly, I've been watching, I finished it. There's like a 3-part episode of the Vietnam War on Netflix. And what I realized, now I really understand the Vietnam War. I didn't until now, having had a pretty low draft number, lottery number, but I was in college, so I didn't have to go. And then the war was over. But people were getting the news from 3 outlets: ABC, NBC, and CBS. Cronkite, Brinkley, and whoever the ABC guy was at the time.
Probably,
yeah, and so information could be contained. The government could say, here, no one was over there in the fields until Peter Arnett and Dan Rather went over with cameras and reported and saying, now here's really what's going on. So but it just shows you how things have changed to a very small communication channel, so you could keep things closed to, in many respects, we're all the media now. I mean, we have a podcast. Everybody's the media.
Yep. That's right.
So we'll cut off that sort of setup. We're very excited to have Danielle Byrd again. We'll have some really great conversations with her. I explained who she is. She may give a little bit more background what she did before MarketCast. I had the pleasure of working with her as a consultant with Turnkey before MarketCast bought that part of Turnkey's company, and so we did work a little bit together. Um, and we laugh about it because there was a generational thing at times where I would suggest things and she would look at me like, okay, that's the baby boomers viewpoint, but this is the new viewpoint. So it created good dialogue, and so we can talk a little bit about that as well. So with that, let's bring in Danielle Byrd. Welcome, Danielle Byrd. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Tony?
Good, good. I understand you're down in Miami, just came out of a possible conference. What's a possible conference?
So it's a fairly new conference. I think it's maybe 3 years old, but it had 6,000 people at the Fontainebleau this year, it was wild. And so it's really like a conference for CMOs and advertisers and marketing. So really related to a lot of the different things that we're planning on talking about today.
That's cool. And I explained a little bit. Obviously, you're an important executive at MarketCast, Senior VP of, I think, tech platforms and partnership, if LinkedIn serves us right. And I knew you when we were actually luring you away from Octagon when I was doing some consulting for Turnkey. And somehow we convinced you. And then Turnkey, that part of the business got bought by MarketCast. And you've been just doing an amazing job since then. But say a little bit about what you want to say about yourself to our listeners and viewers.
Yeah. Well, I will start with saying when I moved over to Turnkey, like so much of that decision was to get to work with you. Whenever I would tell people like, oh, I'm going to get to work with Tony Ponturo, they'd be like, really? Like, you're going to learn so much and it's going to be such a great experience. And I really did. And I think it relates to, again, a lot of the things that we're talking about today, which is like your focus on like knowing your consumers, who you're speaking to. And like when you focus on those things, then like you sell better, right? Or you create better relationships. Like all of those things are so important as you're developing your career and kind of developing a longevity in a position. So today I'm our SVP of Tech Platforms and Partnerships, which is a really fancy way of saying that I run our relationships with some of the larger tech platforms that we have here in the US and globally. But at MarketCast, I really started on the sports sponsorship side of the business. I came from Octagon and interned at the US Olympic Committee before that, which was an incredible experience, was working on kind of Road to Rio campaign. And then actually started my career at Pepperdine Athletics, working across, student engagement, alumni engagement. But yeah, today I'm really focused on kind of like those tech partnerships and growing our relationships there.
And you're one of the many proud alumni of the UMass Amherst program, right? How does it best identify it?
Yeah, so I would like the McCormick Department of Sport Management is what I think a lot of people are really proud of. Yeah, it's an incredible program. I got my MBA and MS in sport management there. I cannot say enough, especially the alumni network. I think going back to, again, some of the things that you and I really focused on when we worked together is like the relationship piece, right? Particularly in the sports and entertainment industry, like relationships are so important. And that's a lot of what the program gives people is like the relationships, the network. And it's helped me to get jobs along the way, which is great.
Let me ask you one question, and then I'm going to throw it back to Ray. I know this could be a little sensitive, but when you talk to clients and you're basically trying to sell them how MarketCast can make them better, what's the one thing, and maybe it's not one thing, that you pick up from a client that's missing in their thought process that's so obvious that you can help them in, that they're just not thinking of it? So I throw you a high curveball, right?
Yeah, really. Just a curve.
Client any time. And that one.
So I think that's hard because I feel like a lot of clients know like hey, we're interested in X, Y, and Z, or we really need to do a project on like understanding teens and young adults, and we need to dig in there. And a lot of the times what I really like to focus on and stress is like, hey, like if we were to take 2 steps back, like what is the like bigger picture here, right? And I think sometimes, because especially in this world today, we're also focused on execute. You need to take a couple of steps back, and really think about like the bigger picture, like who is this project for? What senior leaders is it really going to impact? And that's a lot of the conversation that I have with my clients, because I just, it's so important to understand like who are you eventually serving, and therefore like if we're starting to think about 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of today, what does that mean, right? For the project, for the work we're doing, for our partnership in general.
That's great. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I wonder if that, having sat on the content side of the desk for most of my career, although I spent some time in the agency business, wasn't very good at that. If doing that, which is thoughtful and smart, and then assuming, I don't know if this is in the pitch side or after you've been given the business, because I think there are some other companies that would come in and they want to take you right now. Here's how we're going to change your business within the next 24 months. And they don't ask about the overview. They just start pounding away at like today's problem and go forward. And is that a distinction and a differentiator for MarketCast when you're out bidding for a piece of business? Or do you feel like, because I think that's really smart, by the way. I think it's always good to, okay, let's just take back a step or two. But then that desire to execute and to win the business is so much, here's how we're going to change your business in 24 months. And they don't even ask about, what are you really thinking? It's like, how do we sell more stuff to people?
Yeah. I also, I mean, I think it's hard because sometimes I don't know that I'm necessarily like coming in and thinking like, hey, I'm gonna evolve your business. Like this one project is gonna be a game changer. Like I don't think that. I think I'm gonna make you smarter, right? In my role, my job is to make you smarter about who your consumers are, right? And then a lot of that is like, how is this a building block for like where you're looking to take your business, or how you're looking to better engage people, but it's not like the be all to end all, right? Like I think that piece is really important, is like there's a process to everything that you're doing. There's no silver bullets. Which I also think goes back to some of the conversation that you guys were having at the start, is like, in this world where it's like you're moving quick and you're scrolling through your cell phone and there's kind of that immediate gratification. I think a lot of what we're doing in the research industry in particular is about that like methodical step by step. How do we build? Not just about how we go from like Amazon A to Z.
Well, Tony and I have talked about A to Z before. He's an A to Z guy. I'm an A, B, C, D, E, F, G guy. So we have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't need to see the in between letters to get moving.
Give me A, give me Z. Move on.
But what people, there's 2 things that, and the reason I asked the question and with Ray's follow up is, number one, you really need to know what the brand is trying to accomplish before you can help them accomplish that. And a lot of the communication I feel from marketers to whatever agency or outside party they're using is sort of limited. At least that's what I found in some of my consulting, which is, well, I can't really help you unless you give me an idea of where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are as a brand that we're trying to address. And then ultimately, and this was the thing that used to bother me when I was at Anheuser-Busch, which is, well, what's working and with what we did and what we invested in, do we actually move sales? I think our industry has a way of doing a lot of applauding and clapping and saying, aren't we good? But did they really move the business, which is the ultimate goal? It's not, oh, we're the official fill in the blank of the NHL or the NFL or NBA, but did that actually move product? And if it did, then that's a positive. But if you don't know if it moved product, then that's a negative, or at least that would be a concern.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes the like participation trophy is like so a thing, especially, I mean, for my generation, right? Is
Yeah.
like we all grew up getting participation trophies in sports. And so like
It's a trophy.
how does that translate to the business world that we're all a part of now? And I think that's kind of like an interesting thing to work through.
Yeah, I can do 3 podcasts on that, which we won't do. I've
Well,
already
sidebar, there is a book that the title is Everyone Gets a Trophy.
Yeah.
And it talks about exactly what's happening and why people feel like the stories about a young nurse who's being trained and she puts 10 times the amount of medicine into a patient than she should. And the over supervising nurse catches on to it at a point still in the room, early enough to save the patient, scolds the young intern student and says, you have to be more careful. We can kill people. We can make them live longer. And the young person turned it back on the supervisor. Well, I'm new. What do you expect from me? You're supposed to be watching everything I do. How can I possibly know? And it was just a little bit of that, not like, oh my God, thank you. I'm sorry. I guess, that's why I'm here. But it was like literally flipped it to make the supervisor feel like she was, the problem, as opposed to owning like, yeah, I did do that. And I do need to be more careful because this person may not always be in the room. But that participation trophy concept is a interesting tidbit.
Danielle, what's the thing people should be keeping an eye on right now as technology is going? You're obviously at the cutting edge of all this kind of activity. What's going on that Ray and I would probably not even be aware of or should be paying attention to as we consult others and is there something that's like heading down the track? It's like we can remember when the networks were saying, "Oh, no one's going to watch 24/7 sports or news. Don't worry about it." And then they learn, and then the internet, that's really not us. Let's not worry about it. Social media, TikTok. Well, let's not worry about it. Then they all become all encompassing. Is there even something else coming? Or is it just going to keep the things that we now have just going to keep embellishing?
I think what people are grappling with a lot right now is AI. Not to like sound like I feel like it's a broken record, but like, and it's not just okay. Like AI is out there, right? It's how do we use it? How do we incorporate it properly into our jobs? Like, what is the line? What is the right way to use AI in a workplace, right? Because there's a lot of clients that we have who are like, okay, how do you use AI? That's so exciting. And some of the conversation in the past year has gone from like, okay, we want AI and we want solutions that have AI integrated to being like, okay, I want to make sure actually that like you're not going to put my data into an AI solution that could then spit my data out to another client, right? So like, how do we ensure that there's kind of a closed loop between what's going on? So that has become an even bigger conversation of like, how do we ensure that we're using AI in the right way and the way that it helps make things like better, faster, cheaper, right? Like they want all three. But not in a way that could be risky from a data perspective or could potentially impact anyone negatively.
Yep.
See, now I kind of feel like that is exactly what the 3 networks did in the Vietnam War, right? Like they thought they could contain it, and then over time they couldn't contain it because now we're all media. So I do wonder if, and I understand all about preservation of data, and like that's my thing. That's what I sell. That's what I own. And I just wonder if there's a day coming where, and I think AI would be the platform or whatever you want to call it, where you just can't do it. You can't effectively use AI and not use all the information that everyone owns. And then the struggle between the owners of it, who paid a lot of money for it, built a business on it, had to realize that their clients are getting some things from other people that they're not getting from you, and now you've got the whole so it's a really interesting I said to Tony something about, we did a quick text exchange about you and how great you're doing and MarketCast and where the world is. And we talked about interesting times. Oh, I think you were on that actually. And how we've been around a while, not that it matters, but it's always interesting times. I mean, the business we're in is a blessing for those of us who like what we do. Because man, I don't know what's coming down the pike. Who would know? We didn't know AI was coming down the pike, or the internet, or cable, right?
Part 2 of this podcast will be available next week. For more information, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com. Thank you.